Okay, we need another day of practice on this. Simplifying radicals. This is how I'm going to teach it. These have a 2 inside. Alright, so the first thing what I do is I make one parentheses. I can do this in a multiplication problem, and I'm going to just make one of them, and the radicals are of a 2 degree, so 1/2. Now look at what you have inside the radicals. You take 8 times 40, that's 320. Then on the y's, you add the powers. It's y to the 7th. Okay? There's no outer numbers, so this is what I go with when I apply my exponent properties. So we have 320 times y. 320, 1 times 1/2 is going to be 1/2. 7 times 1/2, here it's that easy, use a calculator. 3.5, so you write 3 and 1/2. Now circle the powers. Now that, remember, that's a separate power from that. Now the powers that are whole powers, meaning they're not fractions, we don't have any negatives, that'll change a little bit tomorrow, okay? Y to the 3rd, we just carry it to the next line, okay? And forget about that. Now look at your powers. You have a 2 and a 2. They are of the same power, okay? Or the same denominator, I should say, 2 and 2. So you make 1 square root, not 2 of them, 1 of them. Now the 2's can be forgotten. And we have 320 to the 1st. Here, I'll even put a 1 there. Times y to the 1st, because there's still a 1 left there. Now, jumping from here to here, y to the 3rd can't be simplified. Now, when I get to the radical, I make a radical, and any letter inside, you just put that at the end, y to the 1st. But the number inside, we need to do a simplification. You can't be lazy on this, okay? You really can't. 320, you're on the big list. 320 is not here, okay? So I attempt to write it into 2 square roots. If I can, if I get to 1, then I just keep the 320. But if I can, I'm going to bring this thing out and that thing in. So 320, you go up, you get decimals, and you get to 64. That's 5, okay? So 64 and 5. That's 8. Now I'm going to repeat this 3 times. The 8 goes to the front, the 5 stays in the radical. I'll repeat that again. The 8's in the front, the 5 stays in the radical. 8 to the front, 5 in the radical. So times 8, 5 in. Now you're done. Clean up the answer so it looks better. So 8y to the 3rd, make a radical with a 2 and 5, and then take the 1 power off the y. That's how it should look. Okay, next one. Both square roots. So you're going to write that, the square roots. You're going to combine them into one whole expression, and you use 1/2 to have your outside power. 8 times 3 is 24, and we multiply those expressions. X to the 5th, x to the 1st is x to the 6th. Okay, then now I'm ready. I don't have anything outside because there's nothing outside. So I have 24 times x. 1 times 1/2 is 1/2. 6 times 1/2 is 3. The one with the whole, here are my powers. The one that's a whole power, I just carry over. He's done. Now I'm done with x then, because there's nothing else there. Now the one that's a fraction, to get rid of the 2, you make a square root, because that's what that means, with a 24. That's done, and inside you put to the 1st power. Okay, now simplify what you can, x to the 3rd. Then I get to the radical. Make the radical, just like that. And you don't have any letters in there, so now you work on simplifying the big number inside the radical, the 24 to the 1st. 24 to the 1st is 24, okay? So I really don't need the 1st. Okay, we're on the perfect squares again. So 24 is not here. I divide and I attempt to write it in two separate radicals. This one needs to be a perfect square though. 24 is divisible by 4. If you divide by 4, you get 6. Okay, so a 2 will be coming out here. I'll repeat that. The 2 goes to the front. It's outside. The 6 is in. You're done. So the answer is 2x to the third radical of a degree 2 over 6. Okay, example 3. Okay, your radicals have 3's in the index, and if you can't tell whether it's in the index, you need to ask me. I'm not a very good writer with exponents. I'm a little big with it, okay? So 3. So we make it to the 1/3 power, and we are able to multiply the insides. So 5 times 50 is going to be 250. Y to the third, y to the fourth, add the powers, you have y to the 7th. Now forget those. But what about this 3 and 2? Well, how about we multiply those? 3 times 2 is 6 and put that outside. So my expression contains a factor of 6, a factor of 250, and a factor of y. Now guys, the 6 does not go to the 1/3. It's not in the parentheses. It's not included in the parentheses. It's just to the 1. Another thing I don't want to see, 250 times 1/3, okay? No. Put a 1 there and you take 1 times 1/3. That'd be 1/3. Y, 7 times 1/3. I smell an improper fraction coming on. It's 2 1/3, 2 1/3. Now circle the powers. There, okay? So the ones that don't contain fractions, I'm allowed to just carry those over. 6 to the first, that as a fraction. Save that for a radical. Y to the second. Okay, so the 2 and the 2 can be forgotten. Now look at your fractions, okay? They both have 3's on the bottom, so why don't we make just one cubed root, not 2 of them, 1 of them, because they're the same. They both have the same number. Now if I had a 3 and a 4, that'd be a different ball game, but they're both 3. So 250 to the first times y to the first. Okay. All right, 6 to the first goes to 6. Y to the second goes there. Now open up your radical and put the variable y to the first. But that 250 needs to be simplified. Some of that can come out. So I divide into 250. Now you're not on this list. It's a 3, so you're looking at the cubes. 250 ain't here, so we got to divide. So we get to 2 cubed roots. 250 is divisible by 125. It's 2. Ditch the cubed root of 125. Now we're at 5. 5 is out. 2 is in. Put a times 5 in the front. Okay. That goes here. And then a 2 in. Now outside, you got your radical. Your radical's pretty much done. You just get rid of that stupid looking first power. Don't put it. But outside, I want you to multiply those 5 and 6. That's 30 y to the second. Done. Okay, example 4. This time, well, my radicals are 4th roots. We probably want to do a 1/4 power. And inside, 27 times 6. That isn't going to take long. 162. And away I go. Don't have much to work with, but it's the same thought process. 162, 1 times 1/4 is 1/4. Now I have just one exponent and it has a fraction, so let's get rid of the 4 by making a 4th root. Put 162 to the first power. Now I trant nothing out, I just have the root, the radical. I'm to the radical right away, okay? And I don't have any variables inside of that. I just need to simplify the number that is inside the radical right here, okay? Because I don't believe that's on the 4th root list. Nope, it's not. 162. Remember, you're trying to divide that into two separate radicals, one of which is a perfect fourth. So you'd start dividing 162 by 81, works right away. So I put 81 and 2. So what's the fourth root of 81? It's 3. Okay? 3 is out, 2 is in. And that's my answer. 3 radical 4 over 2. Okay, example 5. Those are both to this. So I'm probably going to, since it's division works just like multiplication, we're going to put a half. And then I'm probably going to divide the numbers under the radicals instead of multiplying them. That's what that line signals. So 500 divided by 5 is 100. Don't have any variables. So I have 100 to the 1/2 power. This is the only power I have. Yes, it's a fraction, so we get rid of the 2 by making a square root. And inside I put 100 to the first. Okay. Now, I'm right to the radical. Nothing's really outside the radical, so I write the radical down. There's no letters in here, but I do need to simplify the number that's inside. 100 to the first is 100. Okay. Okay, we're looking at square, and by golly gee, 100's here. It's equal to 10 right on the button. 10 goes out, and you have an empty inside, so the answer in the end is 10, okay? Nope, radical's gone. That 10's outside, okay? Anytime I have a number here with a radical, it's outside. Inside's empty. Okay, first rewrite that. Again, we have seconds, so it'll be to the 1/2 power. Now, look at the insides. Now you're thinking division of the big numbers. 48 divided by 3 is 16. And now I subtract the powers. So x, I take 3 minus 1, that's 2. Now with your y, you don't have anything on top, so you best be underlining that, and that's part of the, just extend your parentheses and put y to the second. Okay. Somebody said technically yesterday it'd be y to the negative second. Yeah, but then that goes to the bottom as a positive 2. Okay. So we got 16 times x. They were right. They weren't wrong. Okay. But so 1 times 1/2 is a half. X, 2 times 1/2 is 1 whole. 2 times 1/2 is 1 whole. Okay. Circle your powers. The ones that are not fractions, put them where they lie, okay? Those are done. Fraction, I got a 2, okay? So I make it into a square root and forget the 2. We put the 16 to the first inside. So you got x to the second, first, y to the second. Now make your radical. You don't have any letters inside to put down. If you have them, you put them right there. Those won't become anything else. But I got to simplify the number in the radical. Well, 16 at first is 16. Not much of a point in having that there. Okay, I'm on this list. Square root of 16 is 4. Once again, when that happens, that goes outside the radical in the front. Okay? And we got an empty radical, so we don't need it. So my answer is 4x, because x the first is x, and y. If you want to put the times dots, that's okay. Just don't write the first powers, and that kind of looks dumb. Okay, next one. Radicals are 3, so to the 1/3 power. Okay, so 250 divided by 2, I believe that'd be 125. X's, I minus the exponents now. 7 minus 2 is 5. And then the y, you got 2 y's minus the powers. 3 minus 1 is 2. Now you don't put the y to the second on the bottom because I was able to subtract. Okay, so you don't need a bottom. So what do we have? We got 125 times x times y. 125 times 1, remember that's a 1. You don't take 125 times a third. You don't take a base times an exponent. You put an exponent on the base, then you can multiply 1/3. Okay, 5 times 1/3, that's going to be 1 2/3. 1 2/3. 2 times 1/3 is 2/3. Now circle your exponents. 1/3, the 1 and the 2/3 go separately, and the 2/3. The only exponent I have in that group that isn't a fraction is the x. It's x to the first. It's also to the 2/3, but write the first one. Carry that over and forget the 1. Now, what do all those fractions have in common on bottom? What's their common denominator? It's 3. So I can get rid of the 3's if I make a cubed root. And that cubed root, I'd be putting 125 to the first, x to the second, because it's 2/3. There's a 2 there. You see the 2. And then y to the second, because there's a 2. Okay? Again, when I get rid of those bottom, if I have a 1, yeah, it's to the 1. If I have a 2, it's to the second. 3 to the third, and all that. Okay? So x to the first, that doesn't simplify. Now I got to my radical. Remember, that 3 is the radical. Okay, put the variables in your radical. Those stay put. Now you got to simplify the number in the radical. 125 to the first stays. Now, let's look up our cubed roots. Well, what do you know? 125 is there. I don't have to divide. I just write equals 5. Outside the radical. Okay? The only time you leave the number, you put just one number inside is when you get to 1 at the top. Okay? That's not the case here. So now clean up that answer. We have a 5. X to the first is equivalent to x. I have a cubed root. And in it I have x second, y second. Just like that. Okay, last one. Okay, 48 divided by 6 is 8. Okay. X, 3 minus 2 is 1. And on the y's, 2 minus 1 would also be 1. Okay, so we're ready to rock and roll with our properties of exponents. So you got 8 times x times y. So 1 times 1/3 is 1/3. 1 times 1/3 is 1/3. 1 times 1/3 is 1/3. Okay, here are my powers. They all look to be fractions. And they all have the same bottom. Okay, so I make a radical of a degree 3, just one of them. Don't make 2 of them or 3 of them. And in it, we put the 8 to the first. We put the x to the first, and we put the y to the first. Okay. So over here, I'm right to the radical. Okay. When I deal with the radical on this line, I keep the variables inside. And that number that's in there, we need to see if that simplifies. So 8 to the first is 8. Okay. Cubed root of 8 is 2. And outside. Okay. So you got 2, you got a cubed root, you got x, y, just like that. All right, hopefully that's a little better today.